everybody, it's Liz Cross here, and I want to introduce you all to Mr. Shakespeare. We are so lucky to have Mr. Shakespeare. He is really great at doing probes, mind probes, and oftentimes the readings that we have together are just mind probing one person after another. So I thought that Mr. Shakespeare would be perfect. He's also British, so he has that British sense of humor, which most of you know. I'm actually British as well, so somebody to have a laugh with. And anyway, I know you're going to love him. So Mr. Shakespeare, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Liz. Yeah, good to be here. Good to be with you all. Yeah, so introductions. I'm English, I'm British, I've got a weird sense of humor similar to Liz. But I do like doing some probes of people. I have an asymmetric view of how we're going to do these things. So without further ado, let's start. I'm just going to share my screen with you, Liz.
Okay.
Okay, you
and
should
just
see it.
sorry, let me just add, just so everybody knows, I actually this is still the same format. I don't know what we're doing today. I'm going into this blind. Okay, Mr. Shakespeare, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, this guy is a guy called Tom Luongo. He runs a blog called Gold, Goats and Guns. He's an American. He lives in Florida. But he's a very good analyst, geopolitical and financial analyst. He also understands Bitcoin. So have you got a connection with him, please, Liz?
I do have a connection with him. Now, I've never heard of this guy. How do you know about him?
So I've been following him for quite a while. I follow him on his Twitter, which is TFL1728. He's been around for quite a few years now. He was a research chemist originally, but a few years ago he started doing more analysis of geopolitical and financial events. He's got his hand. He's a very good dot joiner, which is what I like about him. He speaks his mind a lot, and he's quite controversial in certain things, but he seems to be by and large on point. So can we move him out, please, till the end of the first week of January 2023?
Oh, that's different. Okay. And what would be the date of the end of the first week?
If you could pick on the 7th, please.
Okay. So let me move him out. January. So he's like, here I go. That's so funny. January 7th, 2023. He wants to go out further, but I'm going to make him stop at 23. January 7th, 2023, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What would you like to know?
I would like to know, how did the euro do against the dollar?
How did the euro do
for the rest of 2022?
For the rest of 2022, it tanked.
Okay, did it get down to 70 cents?
Did it get down to 70 cents? Possibly lower.
Wow. Okay. The British pound, how did that do against the dollar?
Ooh, now that's something that interests me. The British pound, how did that do against the dollar? It's going up and down. Is it above $1.20 as we're looking at you? It stays relatively around the same. So come January, right now, with, on the current timeline that we're on, it looks like it's relatively the same, flat, $1.20.
Okay, did it go to parity with the dollar at any time in 2022?
That's a great question. Did it go to parity with the dollar at any time in 2022? I feel like it does go lower than $1.20. Did it actually go even? It stays just slightly above, but it does get down even further.
Okay. The Japanese yen, how did that do against the dollar for the rest of 2022?
The Japanese yen, how did that do against the dollar for the rest of 2022? I feel like it stays relatively the same. It just dipped slightly below, but then it recovers.
Okay. And what about the US dollar index, the DXY? How did that do? Did that climb? Did that climb over the rest of the year? Did the dollar get stronger?
I'll answer that question, then you'll have to explain that to me. The DXY index, did the dollar get stronger? Very strong. Please explain to the audience what that means.
Yeah, sure. So the US dollar index is, it's basically the dollar. The US dollar index measures the value of the US dollar relative to a basket of 6 currencies: the euro, the Japanese yen, the British pound, the Swiss franc, the Canadian dollar, and one other one. I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head, but it's basically how does the currency do against these other currencies? And it's a good way of measuring what people think on a global scale. So could we ask, how did the dollar do against the Swiss franc?
How did the dollar do against the Swiss franc? How did the dollar do? I feel like the Swiss franc is relatively strong, and it stays strong. Which is stronger, the dollar or the Swiss franc? The dollar. Wow. Okay. But it does stay strong.
Okay, and the last question on this particular thing for this is, how did the US dollar do against the Canadian dollar, or reverse? How did the Canadian dollar do against the US dollar?
How did the Canadian dollar do against the US dollar? It slows way down, the Canadian dollar.
Did it get to an all-time low in the ratio?
Did it get to an all-time low in the ratio? No, there have been years when it has been lower, but it's pretty low.
Okay.
What do you think is going on here with the dollar? Do you have a theory?
I do have a theory. I think that Europe and everywhere is in decline, and capital is flowing out of the Eurozone and into the US, which is strengthening the dollar and weakening the European markets especially. So that also includes pound. You could ask him that. Has capital flown out of Europe? Has left Europe and gone into the US?
Has capital flown out of Europe, left Europe, and gone into the US? Yes, at a massive scale.
There you go.
What does that mean overall, though, for the economy?
It means for the European economy, it's tanked very badly. This year will be very, very bad. Obviously, prices then will reflect that. Inflation will hit hard. Ask him about how has inflation hit generally the EU?
How has inflation hit the EU? I feel like his response is the EU is poverty stricken.
There you go.
That's his response. What is the inflation, the actual inflation number, not what the government gives, because we all know that the governments tend to spin those numbers anyway. So what do you believe is the actual inflation? He says 70%.
17 or 70?
70.
Wow. Okay. Well, if it's that high, then yes, Europe is well and truly put a fork in it. It's done, because I mean that's gonna put prices and everything through the roof for energy, food, gas, oil, everything that people need, and of course wages will not keep up with it, so it will be hitting everybody very, very hard. Okay. Ask him, how's Bitcoin doing in January?
How's Bitcoin doing in January? It's really low, he says.
Oh, why does he think that is?
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so low? It just hasn't had the opportunity to recover.
Okay. Did the Fed at any time during the rest of the 2022 reverse its policy and reduce its interest rate on the overnight repos? So.
Oh my God. Okay, let's slow that question down.
Yeah, sorry. Just say, did the Fed Reserve reverse its policy and reduce interest rates? At the moment, it's increasing them. Did it reduce them?
Did the Fed reverse its interest rate policy? No, it's still going forward.
Did the Fed increase at its monthly or bi-monthly meetings? Were the only actions upwards? In other words, so the Fed always increased by so many basis points.
Was it the Fed always increased every time there was a meeting and there was an announcement, was it always an increase in interest rates? Yes, but very small increments.
Okay. Does he still believe that the Federal Reserve is doing this to thwart the globalist agenda?
Do you believe that the Federal Reserve is doing this to thwart the globalist agenda? Absolutely no. Explain that to everyone, please.
So the globalist agenda is where they want everybody to own nothing and be happy. The problem is that the big US institutions, including the Fed, if that was to take place, they wouldn't be around. When I mean the big institutions, I mean the banks, the big commercial US banks like JP Morgan and people like that. They are basically going to fight for their survival. And so what they're going to do is they're going to be anti-globalists, for not necessarily for the people, although the people should benefit from it. And by the Fed raising rates, he's forcing and forcing and forcing the EU. Why would money stay in the European Union where they're treated badly on negative rates, and the money would then flow to the US, which would then be massively beneficial to US citizens ultimately, although there will be major problems, because with all that money coming in, that will cause inflation in the US as well. But it's you either have a stagflation or a hyperinflation, and either way, I mean, all this debt, there's so much debt awash in the world, it has to be dealt with one way. The globalists want Biden administration to, you know, via the Fed to lower rates to nothing and just print. But the Fed doesn't want to do that, so they keep raising rates. And one of the things that Tom mentioned before in one of his things, in his missives, is that he believes that the Fed are on the good side of life at the moment, which is why they're raising rates. And you'll have banks like JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, who are also, you know, not wishing for their own funeral. And so they've basically got to break the globalist agenda. And the Fed is the only bank in the world that can print and have elastic money. The European Central Bank cannot do that, which brings me on to ask him how the ECB are doing, the European Central Bank.
How is the European Central Bank doing? Not good at all, he says. They're struggling. And here he goes again talking about this agenda. He says that they're struggling to push their agenda.
Right. Well, their agenda is the globalist. You know, they're not they're not sovereigntists. They're, you know, globalists. They believe in one everything. Whereas sovereigntists, a sovereign guy, you know, believes just for themselves, for their country.
Right. I mean, look, you know, love, here comes my British coming out because I'm speaking to somebody British. And that's what happens when I converse with my family. I swap over to Brit. Look, love, I mean, I used to live there. I know what it's like, and I can't understand for the life of me why anybody would want to give up their sovereignty. I don't understand why Europe is pushing a globalist agenda and losing themselves. Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, it doesn't, but don't forget, if you look at the nodding heads you know, that have been placed in a position of power, they are all WEF, you know, young globalists and things like that, who've been trained, brainwashed, I don't know, but trained to believe this is the way forward when it's not. But
right. But I find from doing these probes, and I'm sure you agree, that generally they don't just do this out of the goodness of their own heart, right? We've all seen that recently. Okay. I mean, it has to line their pockets or benefit them in some way. Do you have any idea as to how they are being benefited by this?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, but obviously there's compensation somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Because people do not do these things without compensation.
Well, they don't unless you're an ideologue. If you believe in the ideology of what you're doing, you'll do it almost free of charge. I mean, they're well paid anyway in their positions. So I don't know. Look, most politicians are on the gravy train somewhere. That's the
Yeah,
same. That's the same in the US, the UK, EU. It's all gravy train.
it is. It is. And that's the thing with doing these mind probes over the past 2 years. It always comes down to the money. So that could be a future probe. If you want to note that down, we can definitely do that. Try to find out where these people are getting their pockets lined, because I mean, they're not going to do it without that. We know from probing politicians in the US, they all have their hand in a pot of money somehow. And
Right.
it's just the reality of the situation. It's very rare that people do anything out of the goodness of their heart.
No.
So this guy is very interesting. I like probing him. He's very sharp. I like his energy. I don't know what his general political affiliation is, but I do like his answers. They're very clear and concise. So that's very good when you're doing a probe.
Yeah. Well, he's you know, as I say, he seems to be on point with a lot of things, and he's a very, very good dot joiner. So I like to follow him. You know, I've been following him for quite a while now. So he gets the bigger picture as well, which is good. Can you ask him, did anybody else, any other leaders in the EU have to resign after Mario Draghi from Italy?
Oh, did any other EU leaders have to resign after Mario Draghi? And I feel like, yes, there was a couple of more resignations. Tell
Was
us
it?
about this resignation with Mario. I don't even know what's going on there.
Well, I think, I mean, he's an ex-Goldman Smith banker. Goldman Sachs, not Goldman Smith, Goldman Sachs. He was also head of the ECB for a while, and then he basically took a globalist job, basically to ruin Italy. He was trying to destroy Italy as much as he can. It's just got to the point now where I think it's untenable. I also have a feeling that some of these guys know the gig is up, and you know they need to get out of the way. They know what they're doing is wrong, and so you know,
Okay.
yeah. So he recently resigned. But there's talk now, you know, Macron might be coming out of France, and Olaf, whatever his name is, from Germany. I mean, these are all stooges. They're all put there. I mean, you know, so it's interesting how many others. And you say, he says one or two, maybe?
Yes, yes.
Ask him if it was Macron from France was one of them.
Was it Macron from France? No.
Pity. Okay.
No, no, it's so funny because I don't even know how he just got reelected, didn't he? I mean, I don't even know how, because I felt the general feeling across France was that he wasn't very well liked. He was a bit of a clown, but I don't think he has a strong majority, if I'm correct in saying that.
No, he actually, well, there's two types of election in France. There's a presidential one, and then there's a parliament one. So he won that by some, people say, some dubious means. I don't know, but one thing I do know is Marianne Le Pen, who is portrayed as a hard right political, who she's not. She's more centre. And then there is the sort of hard left party led by a guy who can't remember. And there were a lot of people who should have crossed the party line and said, look, we'll bury it. We've got to get rid of Macron. We'll vote for Le Pen. Le Pen is a nationalist. She believes in France. Macron is a globalist. He doesn't believe in France. And so, but they couldn't bring themselves to vote. In your country, in the country over there, it would be like the hardest Democrat on the left voting for Trump. It would be that type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so they should have gained together, and they didn't. And so they were stuck with Macron again. Now, there's, you know, again, allegations of shenanigans with elections and things like that. Who knows? One thing did happen, though, in the parliamentary elections earlier on, he didn't achieve majority. So his party basically can't do much now. There was a vote on vax passports or something to go to Corsica, and Penn's party and this left side party got together and voted it away. So he's a lame duck. He's a lame duck. So
wow. And you know, but when you say hard right for Europe, that's probably like a moderate by US standards, right?
well, her father, there is some history there. Her father, Le Pen, was more, you know, what you would call right wing. But she's, you know, she is not. She's still portrayed as that because, you know, everybody needs an enemy, don't they? So she's portrayed as that, but she isn't. She's a nationalist. So really, if you're French, you should vote for Le Pen. If you believe in France, you know, you should vote for Le Pen. Why anybody would vote for a globalist, I have no idea.
So do you believe now, do you believe now we're at this juncture in the world where it's nationalist versus globalist, and it's sort of that energetic feud that's going on where the bigger agenda, I mean, where we look at it on a surface level here in the States, it's, you know, Republican versus Democrat, but really going around the world globally, stepping outside of the US, do you believe we are now in this struggle for power, which is actually, you know, globalists versus nationalists or sovereignty?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think, I'm not saying it's imminent today or tomorrow, but people are waking up. People are, you know, they have to realize what globalism is all about, and it's not good for you and it's not good for me. There's nothing good about globalism. I mean, it's only good if you happen to be right at the very top of the pyramid. So if you happen to be, you know, the World Economic Forum guys, Klaus Schwab and people like that, then it's good for them. You know, when they say you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, what they forget to mention is that they will own everything.
Yeah.
We don't care whether you're happy or not. So people need to understand the narratives that are going on.
That's exactly right. I actually did a probe on that before, on that very phrase. And it was like, yeah, but we own everything. When I probed that entity together, it was like, yeah, you own nothing and we own everything. And, you know, because somebody has to own something. The ownership just transfers, it doesn't dissipate. Yeah. So definitely that's quite funny.
I mean, it depends. I mean, the last thing I'll say on this, and it's only a minor point, but say in Germany, I mean, most people in Germany do not own their where they live. It's part of their culture. They're quite happy to be, you know, tenants of larger landlords. It's not the obsession that, say, the British have, and perhaps to a lesser even degree the Americans, are owning their own property. I mean, the Germans, for argument's sake, don't really care. They don't prioritize that. And so, you know.
That brings me to the point that we were talking about yesterday after the CTT group. We stopped the recording and we answered some questions. And we're seeing this huge shift here in the States now, where we're going from being able to buy affordable property to generations of people that will no longer be able to get on that housing ladder. Now, Americans, you know, those that are not open or receiving worldwide information, because it's difficult, right? It's difficult to really find that outside information out of the US if you're not used to being exposed to it. Whereas I know when I lived in the UK, you get a global outlook on the news, right? We don't have that here. Our global outlook is very limited. And this brings me to what I've been predicting, which is we are now entering this phase where generations of Americans will no longer be able to own property. And they're going to end up being like the Europeans, being like the Australians. I tell you, just about every reading that I have out of Canada and Australia is, how will I ever be able to buy a house, right? And that is going in the UK as well now, because the UK prices are just through the roof, and a lot of people in the UK are being priced out. So now we're watching the shift in the US. Now, everybody thinks, everybody thinks that we are going to end up swapping over here in the US to a digital currency. And I feel that the banks are becoming threatened by this. Therefore, they're doing what they know how to do best, which is they're snapping up. And this is what I got in a psychic reading, right? When I was probing yesterday, they're snapping up all of the property now because they have to maintain their power and control. So in the event we did swap over to a digital currency, okay, they still have control over us by way of property. We're still at the mercy of the banks. Now, that being said, I honestly, in my heart of hearts, every time I probe and everybody gets very excited, XRP, DigiByte, all these cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it is, we're going digital, we're going digital, we're going digital. I just don't see it.
Okay, so again, this goes back to what I said earlier then, from the point of view of if the Fed keeps raising rates, then, and the Fed is doing that, even though it will cause major problems in America. But, you know, there has to be some form of cleansing. You cannot have more dollars have been created in the last 2 years than in the whole of the previous God knows how many years since dollar started. I mean, where does all this debt go? It has to be somehow repudiated, reset, or done something with. Now, if the globalists have their way, it'll be hyperinflated away even more. So we'll have hyperinflation. Okay. If Powell and the Fed get their way, they will bring the economy down to a very hard landing due to just jacking the interest rates, even if it's, you know, slow by slow, little by little. And so the question I asked you earlier on with Tom Luongo, you know, if the Fed has constantly for the rest of this year increased interest rates, then that means the globalists are not having their own way. And if the ECB are suffering because of that, which they would, then things are not going their way, which means that their idea of a central bank digital currency is a non-starter. It will not happen. Not the globalist one, no. Won't happen. Won't be able to. So.
Good grief. So that was a very in-depth discussion that I like it. And I hope you all do too. Anything else, Mr. Shakespeare, on this topic?
No, we need to thank Tom for his time, and we'll speak to him soon. So. All
right. Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. Guys, if you like Mr. Shakespeare, drop him a line down in the bottom in the comments and let him know how he's doing. I think he's doing a fabulous job. So thank you so much. It's very refreshing. I really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to stop this one here. And if you want to book a reading with me right now, my site is under construction. Okay, I'm sorry about that, but we needed to get ready for coast to coast, everybody. The CTT and George Duisman, those of you that know, I have practiced under George Duisman, and he for 4 years, and he finally has his big break on coast to coast. So the site is under construction. We are getting ready for that coast to coast traffic. And I have found out that I will be doing my own coast to coast show. If you want to interact with me or Mr. Shakespeare, you can find him on the Discord, which is attached to my Patreon. The Patreon is Remote Viewing and Beyond. Thank you so much, and we'll see you there.